All right, welcome back. Dr. Joe Abah, are you still there? Can I see you now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, doctor, if you can hear me, let's start with this. Why is it that after so many years of this Orosanye report, it keeps resurrecting? You know, we keep going back to it. Why is it so? Why? And not just why at this time that we are battling with COVID-19 pandemic, our revenues won't be coming in as they're coming? Why is this report always resurrecting?
Well, I often say that that doing reforms, doing good public service reforms, can be a bit like gospel. You know, it will always be there nagging away at your conscience until you deal with it. And that has been the case with this Orosanye report. The issues identified by the report remains, and governments, successive governments, haven't really done much about it. One of the reasons is that public service reforms are intensely political in nature. And because of that, a number of interests are affected, particularly when it has to do with reducing spheres of influence, possibly reducing staffing, reducing the amount of patronage various people can spend. So all of those things are difficult decisions to make. And why is it coming up now? Well, as it quite rightly said, the COVID-19 pandemic has occasioned and relocation to drop in revenue. When there's a drop in revenue, it is absolutely the right time to look again at the cost of governance. And this report addresses squarely ways in which the cost of governance can be reduced. And a number of people focus on ministries, but the ministries are only about 24 or so. We have about 1,000 agents. We have about 1,000 agencies. Cost of governance actually goes in.
Okay, it seems we need to reestablish that connection. In case you're just joining us, please, you can follow us on all our social media platforms. Let's try as much as possible to reestablish connection again with Dr. Joe Abah, one of the side effects of technology. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
As the COVID-19 pandemic engulfs the world, fear has given way to uncertainty.
I am directing the cessation of all movements.
I am officially declaring a national emergency.
With Nigeria dealing with socio-economic realities and security concerns never imagined, how has the country been tackling the coronavirus and at the same time preserving its citizens from the economic fallout of the pandemic now and post-COVID-19? In response to these issues, AIT.live is running a series of virtual town hall forums hosted in the Nigerian capital city Abuja with live studio guests and a global audience of online participants. The town hall topics and dates are as follows. Friday, 15th May 2020. Topic: COVID-19 recovery, interrogating the monetary interventions of the CBN and fiscal policy initiatives of the federal government. Time: 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Tuesday, 19th May 2020. Topic: COVID-19, governance and containment strategy, lockdown compliance, interventions, and resource management. Time: 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. These events will be streamed live on AIT.live, on all our official social media handles, and also broadcast on the AIT and Ray Power FM network. You can be a part of the live online audience from anywhere in Nigeria and around the world via any of these online platforms. The AIT.live Town Hall Forum is supported by Osiwa Nigeria. AIT.live, on air, online, on live.
All right, welcome back. I'm sorry we're having issues with the connection, but doctor, are you there now?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, we seem to be having, yes, I can hear you. We seem to be having a disruption, and perhaps it's from your end, the audio. If it happens like that again, I'll give you just a while so that you can use an earpiece. But if you can hear me, let's continue. You did talk about the cost of governance. I'll be coming to that in a bit. The idea of the Orosanye committee report is about reduction of cost of governance, like you said, through restructuring and rationalization of agencies. Then, do you still think that the implementation is still worthwhile now? And yes, the implementation is still worthwhile now. You'll recall that it was done many years ago. Some agencies have staff more than that now. Do you think that it is implementable right now as at what happened then?
Absolutely. I think, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, absolutely. I think it's now more important than ever to actually implement that report. But there are various aspects of the report. It's not just about abolishing agencies or merging agencies. There are a number of organizations that report said government should no longer be funded through the budget. There are a number of organizations where their enabling laws need to be amended. There are a number of agencies that should be commercialized. So agencies like the Nigerian Postal Service shouldn't really be receiving provisions from the national budget. There are other agencies that could benefit from a merger, like NTA and Voice of Nigeria. There are a number of agencies that simply have too many people. So if you look at the new Partnership for Africa's Development Agency, the NEPAD agency, as an example, the NEPAD headquarters in South Africa has only 27 staff. NEPAD Nigeria has over 200. That is the kind of imbalance that we're looking at. So yes, I think now the opportunity of I think the pandemic is actually an opportunity to take certain difficult decisions, because the government simply can no longer afford to carry the number of agencies that it currently has and the staffing of some of those agencies. Not doing so, in my view, would be a missed opportunity.
In the implementation of this Orosanye report, is there an easy way to implement, and is there also a hard part of it?
I think rather than focus on easy and hard parts, I think we should look at what is the proper way of implementing. And there are different recommendations, and each recommendation requires some thinking about what is the proper way of doing it. So even if you were to talk about scrapping some agencies or merging some agencies, there's a proper way to do it. You know, you need to look at the reasons why the agencies were set up in the first place. You need to see whether those reasons continue to exist or have been taken over by events. If you are merging an agency, there are ways to do it. In the private sector, you know that mergers and acquisitions are not things that just happen automatically. There's actually a process to go through, and it's actually quite a serious process to go through. And then, you know, you need to think about the staff that will be affected, whether you're talking about mergers or you're talking about abolitions, and try to find the best way to minimize job losses within that decision that you're making. And one of the proper ways to do that is to carry the unions along from the very beginning and ensure that they are part of all the discussions and part of all the decisions that are being made from the very beginning. So there are proper ways to do things, and you know, the bureau that I used to run, BPSR, has actually reviewed both the Orosanye report and the government white paper that was released in 2014 in response to it on two different occasions, and come up with very concrete recommendations about what could be done in the short term, what could be done in the medium term, what could be done in the long term. And also giving quite a lot of thought to how to manage staffing issues in order not to cause undue job losses. So I think it's just for the government to have the courage to put the mechanism in place to enable all of these recommendations to be put in place.
Okay, let's talk about the job losses, because when that filtered into the news, a lot of people, where their minds went to is that a lot of people will lose their jobs. Let's take it this way. Would it be more expensive for the government to rationalize right now to reduce its staff? Because if it does the mergers and acquisition, just like you said, if it rationalizes the agencies, some people will be out of work. Some people will move to other ministries. Those that are out of work or out of their jobs will be given severance packages. Can the government also afford that? Are these some of the things that need to be on the table that the government needs to holistically look at?
Absolutely, Nancy. These are all important issues that need to be on the table. But the one thing that is worth bearing in mind is that a lot of the expenses on governance is actually on staffing. Okay, so a majority of the expenses are on staffing. However, the public service is not necessarily balanced in terms of staffing. So you find some agencies that have too many and some agencies that have too few. And you have some agencies that have particular skills and some agencies that are lacking in those skills. So if you take an organization like NNPC, for instance, NNPC has, I think, close to 10,000 staff. And you need to bear in mind 10,000 staff is about the same size of the civil service or the public service of an average state government in Nigeria. So this is a huge organization in terms of staffing. You then have organizations like the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria that has in excess of 5,000 staff. And so you need to really start to ask, does this agency need 5,000 people? So that's on the one hand. And then you have organizations like the Federal Inland Revenue Service that collects taxes. And the fact that we don't collect as much taxes as we can collect. Don't even worry yet about increasing taxes or the rise in VAT or any of that. Even at current rates, we're not collecting all the taxes that we're supposed to be collecting. And so can you start to shift some staff to some of these areas? If you take policing as an example as well, we are under-policed as a nation. Take the National Orientation Agency, you think, for instance, that there's quite a lot more that could be done. You take the National Bureau of Statistics, they don't have enough people to collect statistics for a country of 200 million people. So you have this imbalance. And so before we start talking about job losses, let's do some rebalancing first and say, okay, which agencies have too many, which agencies have too few. You also think about certain skills, skills like information technology skills, monitoring and evaluation skills, data analysis skills, strategic communication skills are not skills that are very common in the public service. There are organizations that have those skills, that have people that have those skills that have been slated for abolition or merger. Can you take some of these staff and put them in places where those skills are lacking? So that's the kind of sensible discussion I think we need to have. There are also some people that, have maybe less than 2 years to serve. They could be encouraged to go earlier. They could be given a package to go earlier, given some training, so that whatever package they get, they can use it to start a self-employment business of some sort. So I think if you bring the unions into this early, the unions themselves would work with government. They will help government to ensure that people who may be required in other places are placed in those places, and people who have certain skills that are lacking in other places will be deployed or redeployed to those places before you even start to talk about job losses. So yes, all of these things need to be on the table and needs to be intelligently thought through.
How about for people that say that the timing is wrong? That's the A part of that question. The B part of the question is, if we take a look at what COVID-19 has done to all of us, it's making us have a reset in our thinking, rethinking work model. I'm bringing that to perhaps when this will start, or if the government has to also take this into cognizance. We have duplication of agencies, so to speak. You see, an agency was created. Meanwhile, a former agency should be doing what that new agency should be doing. So will the government also be taking into cognizance what is happening right now as regards to what we should be looking at in the future of work? You are working from home, so to speak. So should that also be looked at? Because yes, this is what COVID has done. So it's not also about having a lot of people, you know, but the future of work, we're seeing what's happening. Robots are doing a lot of things human beings are doing.
Well, I used to work in the UK, as you're aware, Nancy, and one of the things, one of our mantras when the 9/11 attacks happened was you should never waste a good crisis. And you know, the COVID-19 crisis is a major crisis, and it provides us with an opportunity to take a look again at how we're doing things. So, like you said, I've been working at home for the last 2 months. I was running a management meeting this morning just before this program, where we were talking about you know, the need to look again at our 2020 budget. The fact that our travel budget will have to come down significantly. Our hotel budget will have to come down significantly. We need to look at the size of our office space and consider whether everybody still needs to be going into the office, or whether there are actually people who have quite successfully been able to work from home. So yes, government should look at all of these things holistically and try to see ways in which we can do things better. And you're absolutely right. The reason why we are in the situation we're in with regards to the number of agencies we have is that when something is not working well, instead of taking the hard decisions required to fix that thing, we simply create another agency. That's what we've done. And so if you look at the police, for instance, the creation of civil defense, the creation of Federal Road Safety Commission, all of these bodies is as a result of our unwillingness to fix our police service. And so I think that this crisis presents a wonderful opportunity for government to take certain hard decisions, to look at the best way of doing things, and be strong enough to take certain decisions that will benefit the country in the long run.
That will benefit the country in the long run. You know, one would ask, because you were the Director General of BPSR at a time, one would ask that how much will this even add to the kitty? You know, but I realize you said earlier that some majority of the funds go into staff salary. So one would say, if this is implemented, how much would we even be getting? How much will be added to the public purse to run the country, especially now that we are combating our COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, it's difficult to say, but let me just use one example about what could possibly be saved. So I took a look at AIT's finances and realized that AIT generates on average about 6 billion naira every year. I then looked at what we spend on NTA, and we spend 7 billion annually supporting the NTA. So you can imagine if we were to insist that the NTA commercializes and survives in the way that AIT does, in the way that Channels does, in the way that other private television stations do, you can see that that's a saving of $7 billion there straight away in just one agency, just one organization. We haven't even talked about if you merge organizations, you no longer have to pay for buildings, you no longer have to pay for overheads, you no longer have to give capital expenditure twice. And you know, the Honorable Minister of Labour and Productivity announced, I think yesterday or the day before, that the plan would be not to get rid of any member of staff. But if you look at how much is spent on capital, if you look at how much is spent on overheads, paying for rented buildings, electricity, buying various SUVs, travel and training, and all of this kind of stuff, it is my belief that it will actually amount to quite a significant saving for government.
Now, you brought up the issue of NTR. Let me speak on that a bit. You did say AIT, looking at the statement, AIT making about 6 billion yearly. Doctor, that was when the goings were good. It's not been making that kind of money now. If you take a look at what we've been doing, we've reprogrammed the station, you know, for public good and public enlightenment. So you're seeing less of advert spends and all of that. So perhaps yesterday on the show, I was talking about support wherever it is coming from, because it's also a company. But I needed to bring that in. If you go to the NTA part, NTA, you know, I think they have all stations. They have all NTA stations in 36 states of the Federation. So if you want to rationalize or you want to restructure NTA, do you need the number of staff in all the states of Nigeria? What will happen, you know, to other staff members? You understand what I mean? So NTA, I think, should have more staff than AIT.
I think the question, Nancy, is does NTA need to be in all 36 states? Can we afford it? It's the same question that I ask. You know, yes, the Constitution says we should have a minister from each of the 36 states. Can we afford it? We have a national orientation agency that has offices in all 774 local government areas of Nigeria. Can we afford it? Do we need it, and can we afford it? And that I think is the hard question that we need to ask. And I suspect that if AIT was getting 7 billion naira worth of funding from the federal budget every year, perhaps the kind of repurposing that you've had to do, you may not even cross your mind to do. And those are the kind of hard questions that we should be asking. Of course, NTA being in all 36 states provides a view of the entire country. Of course, it enables the full range of diversity of our country to come through. But are there better ways in which we can do that? I'm talking to you now on Skype. Rather than have a full structure in each of the 36 states, can we have a couple of people in each of the 36 states that are able to provide updates electronically to the headquarters without running a full NTA office in each of the states? And if they are generating the kind of advert revenue they should be generating, then they actually don't need budgetary provision from the center. And in that case, they can recruit whoever they like. But when you are providing 7 billion annually, and they're not bringing in the revenue, and others are able to survive without getting 7 billion naira a year, then you need to think seriously at what you're doing. And I'm not saying it to pick on NTA. There are very many other organizations as well that government is providing funding to that it needs to rethink.
Yes, you know, it just boils down to what we had said earlier in terms of the issue of the future of work. That was why I asked that question. If there are things that technology and the internet will make easier, I speak to anybody I want to speak to right now around the world. So it doesn't matter that we have a station in that country. So would agencies be ready to take this perhaps hard road, but will be easier in the long run? You did talk about courage earlier. Do you think that this government has the political will to last few years? Anything that happens, like okay, let's go back to our Orosanye report. Hey, let's go back to our Orosanye report. It's like a shadow. It's like our shadow is following us, though we are not, you know, thinking about it, or we are just forgetting that the shadow is with us.
I think you make a very important point, Nancy, because the Orosanye report was actually submitted in 2012. We didn't put forward a white paper until 2014. And even that white paper rejected a large number of the recommendations. In 2015, DPSR under my leadership submitted a revision of both the white paper and the Orosanye report and an update. That wasn't taken forward. In 2017, I was invited back, even after I'd left, to address the economic management team on how some of this implementation could happen. My successor presented to council. The president approved that the implementation should start. That was in 2017. We're in 2020 now, and we're still talking about the same Orosanye report. And not much has changed since it was submitted in 2012. And so my hope is that given the fact that oil prices have plummeted to the extent to which they have, government income has reduced, the lockdown has led to a sharp decrease in economic activity, income from VAT and other sources will fall drastically. My feeling actually is that government no longer has a choice but to amend some aspects at least of this report. That's my hope, and I hope that government does not lose the opportunity provided by this crisis to have a serious rethink about the way that it manages agencies and state.
Okay, Doctor, in just 20 seconds, because I've got to go, when we're talking about government, we don't also just mean the federal government, because it will also pass through the National Assembly. So what are we going to be seeing as per political will from legislators? Then the second part, again, is about governance, because governance is for public good. So as Nigerians, we're hoping that selfish interest or interest for the few will not overtake this. In just 20 seconds.
And the government, the executive, needs to engage with the legislator as quickly as possible, because every agency that is affected or potentially affected by abolition or merger is likely to have an enabling act in the National Assembly. So you can't just abolish or merge without engaging with the National Assembly. I believe that engagement needs to be now, actually. And there's a need to get the National Assembly on side to enable them support this. It's also possible to have a composite agency reform law, so that you don't have to abolish or amend each individual agency's law. You can have a composite law that covers all of the agencies you want to abolish or merge, and just have that presented to the National Assembly for debate. Finally, in terms of governance, again, you're absolutely right. The important thing must be, do all of this lead to better public goods? Does it make the life of the Nigerian better? That must be the focus, not just on cutting costs. We must find a way to make the delivery of public goods more streamlined, more effective, and cheaper.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I'm afraid we've run out of time. I would have asked you other questions on civil service and public service, if our public servants are too large or civil servants are too large. But we'll leave it for another day, because this is a continuum. We'll continue to look at the implementation and see what government does. So hoping to have you back soon. Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks, Nancy. Thanks for having me.
All right. I've been speaking with Dr. Joe Abah, who is the country director of DAI. He was also the former Director General of BPSR.